Hello and welcome to Fox Sports Lab NRL. I'm Eloise Sohier and with me are NRL greats Josh Morris and Chris Lawrence and alongside stats guru Tim Williams. Well, let's catch our breath and have a look back at what we have liked and disliked across this amazing start to this season. Gents, it's great to have your company. Chris, I'll start with you. These close finishes for 2023, they've been spectacular.
Yeah, definitely. I think on the weekend, we saw particularly the Sharks and Warriors game and then the Cowboys and Bulldogs, coming down to the wire and the way they finished, and obviously had the draw earlier on. But each and every week, there have been close games, haven't been a lot of blowouts. And particularly in the games on the weekend, you had two teams who finished at the bottom of the table with new coaches beating top four sides from last year. So it just goes to show at this stage how close the competition is, and it just provides for some great entertainment.
Tim, I suppose I'll get to you on this one about how close this competition really is. In years gone by, have we ever seen a competition so close where it really is anyone's game?
I can't remember one, Eloise, being so open. Like the sides coming 12 to 16, those five teams were all top 8 sides last season. 3 of the 4 sides made the preliminary final last year, and they're in the bottom half of the ladder, the bottom half of the bottom half of the ladder, to say the least. So it's just so exciting that's how the competition's set up this season. Whether or not it stays like that the long haul, probably not, but it's been great so far.
Is one of the biggest things in terms of seeing if it can stay this way, and in terms of the long haul that you touched on there, Tim, injury front, is that what can really change the competition in terms of the clubs?
Yeah, I think so. I think the teams that have the least amount of injuries normally do the best. You keep that cohesion week in, week out, and I think you can see that in the Broncos. They've pretty much had their same team throughout the whole first 4 or 5 rounds. So that plays a big part in the team's success, definitely.
Let's talk about still on the likes. Josh, what have you really liked this season? You've been impressed by the Warriors.
I've been very impressed. They're sitting in second. They've had 4 wins and 1 loss. That only being to the Roosters, it was a 20-12 loss, so it wasn't a big loss. But it's just the resilience. They were down 20-0 against the Sharkies and come back in a wonderful game and won. But they're winning away from home, and it's the way that they're doing it as well. In years gone by, they didn't win too many games when they were away from home. So if they can keep winning games away from home and win their fair share at home, they're going to be in the top 4.
And leading the front on that one, Shaun Johnson, obviously, hasn't that just been so exciting to see SJ? About 5 minutes into round 1 against the Knights, he let Lachie Fitzgibbon through for a try. It was a pretty poor missed tackle, and you just thought the worst. Is this the end of SJ? Very much jumping to conclusions. The way he's bounced back in the Warriors, I think he's had 5 try assists this season, a couple of tries to his name as well, 4 try contributions. He's been outstanding, and obviously in the twilight of his career, if he can go out on a big high note, not that this is necessarily his last year in the NRL, but the next couple of years, so good to see.
Absolutely. Andrew Webster doing huge things across the ditch. Now let's have a look at the dislikes. We don't like to talk too negative, but it's important to sort of, I suppose, look at some other clubs that aren't doing so well. The Cowboys, Josh, hasn't impressed you so far through 5 rounds?
No, they've been pretty disappointing, to say the least. They've only had 2 wins, and one of them was a field goal. They beat the Raiders by a field goal, and the way they played against the Warriors at home, that could to do with Scott Drinkwater being out. Those first 2 games, he looked very instrumental in their side, and I think getting him back, we might see a better gauge of the Cowboys coming up this week.
One side that's not doing, well, haven't recorded a win, let's put it that way, Chris, is the winless West Tigers. Where is it all going wrong for them so far, and can they back it up against the Eels and turn it around? Yeah,
look, I think it's been very disappointing, obviously 0-5, but particularly the performance on the weekend. I think if you look at the first 4 games, yes, the first 2 weeks were against some, you would say, bottom of the table sort of teams, and probably expected to win one of those, but they weren't beaten by much, and there was poor execution, but the effort was there. What was really poor on the weekend was when they did make a mistake, there's a lot of heads dropped, and there was just the ease of tries, and it was some of the effort areas were really down. That was probably the most disappointing thing, and I think if they don't turn that around very quickly, it's going to be a long, not only a couple of weeks, but a long year. I think if they are going to turn it around, this week is the chance. They beat Parramatta in the corresponding game last year, 0-5, so I think they really need to get the win this week.
Where do you see Adam Dewey's best position?
Look, I think his best position, I personally think, is probably in the centres. Obviously, he's a very influential figure, and obviously with the players they have in their spine now, 6 is probably his position with the players they got. I think if they're going to stick with, obviously, Adam at 6 and Brooksy in the halves, they have to stick in that way. As you know, the more you change combinations, not so much in attack but defensively, it's very hard to build those connections in defence. And your middle third and your forwards can be winning the ruck, and all it takes is 1 or 2 bad decisions, and that lack of connection in the edge, you let a try in, and then soon you might be 3 tries down, and that lack of confidence with a feeling, particularly for this side, you might be on top and feel like you're on top, but because of that lack of connection, because of players continually getting changed, you find yourself down. So I think whatever combination they go, they have to stick with that, and they have to stick with that combination.
Chris, Brandon Wakeham gets caught up last week for one game. Get dusted, dropped, changing again. Like, what's that going to do for a bloke's confidence?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with all the players in terms of their confidence. Obviously, they have to make a change because of the performance last week. So now that they've moved some positions around, they have to stick with that for the next couple of weeks. Particularly, they would have gone a whole pre-season with a few different combinations, but would have really predominantly stuck with a certain combination. If that is Brooks, at half, Dewey at 6 and Staines at 1, they're going to have to stick with that for the next couple of weeks anyway.
So much to discuss on the winless Tigers. Let's hope they can get a win against the Eels. That is our early look at a season that has been nothing short of sensational. The Roosters snapped a 5-game losing streak over Storm at Amy Park in round 24 last season. And Josh, you're expecting another upset this Easter weekend.
I am. Since their first round loss against the Dolphins, they've played a really dominant style of football. They've beaten the Warriors, Souths and the Eels. So they're just playing a style of football which I think really suits them, going down to Melbourne and beating them there.
The Storm, well, they haven't won at Amy Park. 6 of the last 10 against the Roosters at Amy Park. Tim, you believe the Roosters can get consecutive wins here?
I do, yeah. The numbers would say differently. Melbourne are actually going for 14 straight Thursday night game fixture wins on the trot. But I also think we're probably talking about a different Melbourne Storm side to previous years. They were really good last weekend against the Bunnies, but look, I think the Roosters have got too much firepower. We know Teddy's out, but they've got some decent cattle to replace him.
Yeah, Chris, I might touch on you. James Tedesco is out. What does that mean for the Roosters? And does Joey Manu, Joseph Suaalii, whoever plays there, can they fill his role?
Look, obviously it's going to be a hole to fill having James Tedesco. You always want him fit and healthy and playing, but really excited to see Joey Manu. I think he'll play fullback. We all saw what he did in the World Cup for New Zealand when he was given a more dominant role. I think he's going to use this as his chance to really step up, and I think he's going to be the difference between the two sides.
I think we may see interchanging between both Josephs as well throughout the game. If Joey gets a bit tired, we might see the other one jump in the back, which they don't lose too much there.
Yeah, Storm is the favourites, but our panel is unanimous in tipping a Roosters victory. The traditional Good Friday clash between the Dogs and Rabbits always creates plenty of drama, and this year promises to be no different. Josh Morris and Tim Williams are alongside me. Tim, I'll start with you. The Bulldogs coming off that huge win last week. Can they back it up against the Bunnies?
Really exciting last weekend against the Cowboys, wasn't it? Look, I think they're up against it for a few reasons. They've taken more of a hit to their forward stocks again. Raymond Faitala-Mariner's out, Franklin Pele's out, Maxi King's under an injury cloud along with Jacob Preston. So the 5-day turnaround as well won't help them. So I'm tipping against them in this one, but hopefully they can put up a fight without a lot of cattle.
What do the Bunnies bring to the game this week, considering what we've seen so far this season? A little bit of inconsistency. Do you think that they can put it together this week?
Funnily enough, they've had one of the best defences in the competition this season. Their attack's actually ranked, I think, third last in the whole competition. So that won't be far off. Their right edges look really good, so I think they can bounce back.
Well, let's now take a look at the other Friday night clash, all Queensland affair. We've got the Cowboys and the Dolphins. Who are you backing in this one, Josh?
I'm backing the Cowboys. I think Scott Drinkwater is a massive in. I think he's had those 3 weeks off, but before that they looked like a well-oiled machine with him in the side. Dolphins have got a few losses there. In the halves they've got a new pairing, and they just look like defensively they weren't up to it last week against the Dragons, so I'm tipping the Cowboys.
There you have it. Tim Williams is backing the Bunnies and Josh has the Cowboys bouncing back against the Dolphins.
League is life. It's exhilaration, anticipation, highs and highlights. League is everything. That's why we've made a betting brand for League fans. That's better. Chances are you're about to lose.
The Panthers appear to have found their groove, and that could prove fatal for a Seagulls side coming off a rare draw. Chris, the Seagulls have not beaten the Panthers in the past 6 matches. Do you expect that to change this week?
Look, I'm with the Panthers. I just think, they were super impressive against the Raiders. I feel they found their edge and they were very ruthless of playing the type of football that in the past few seasons has seen them string a lot of wins together, and I think they'll continue that this weekend.
Manly will be up by the fact that they're welcoming back Josh Schuster, no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. He's a massive inclusion for them. Like, he brings them that X factor, and I think if they're within striking distance of the Panthers late in the game, he's going to give them that chance. I just think the Panthers over the last couple of years have played those tight games, and that's what's going to get them over the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's no respite for the struggling Raiders. They face the competition frontrunners, the Broncos, at Suncorp Stadium. Chris, it's hard to look past the Broncos at this point of the season.
Yeah, you just can't go past the Broncos. They're just such, high in confidence, haven't lost a game, and their key players are playing well, and they're scoring a lot of points, and obviously come up against the Raiders team who are quite down on form. I can't see the Raiders beating the Broncos.
The Raiders conceded 53 points last week against the Panthers. Ricky Stewart's going to have to try and turn that around and turn it around quickly against a side like the Broncos who've got players like Reece Walsh and X Factors.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest issue. You've got a side that can score points in the Broncos, and you look at the Raiders and they haven't been able to put on the points themselves. They've been able to stay in games through the defence, so if they can't get the defence right, really gives them a tough chance to win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a Panthers-Broncos double on Saturday for Chris Lawrence. The panel is back with me as we cherry pick some crucial round 6 matches. Firstly, we head north where a Titans outfit are fresh off a bye. They host the buoyant Dragons side. And Josh, you're alone in tipping the Dragons here. Tell us why.
Well, they got the job done against them last time, and this time they have no Foran or Brimson. So I think their performance against the Dolphins, they scored 38 points and only conceded 12, so that's a big tick for their defence, and I think they'll need that this week heading into this week's game.
Do we see much different in the Dragons outfit of the game that they got the win, and we know how desperate they were? What do we see that was different? Was it the effort areas that we saw, Chris?
Yeah, definitely. I think it starts with that. It starts with the effort areas. If you get those things right early on in the game, it gives you the right to move the ball and gives you that confidence later in the game, which we did see they scored a lot of points. I think the thing with the Dragons is their consistency. They've gone from quite a heavy loss down in those effort areas and have turned it around, but can they do it 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah, you're tipping the Titans here, Tim. What do you like about the Titans outfit? They've averaging 22 points and conceding 25. What does that say about the team?
Yeah, defensively, defence has never been their strong suit, has it? And I'm a little bit disappointed this season, the Titans, in that I love that they went with a defensive-minded recruiting plan in the off-season with players like Sam Verrills, Kieran Foran in there, Aaron Schopp, some really good defensive-minded moves. Now, it hasn't exactly helped their defence at times. We saw the game against the Melbourne Storm a few weeks back. They lose Kieran Foran this week and AJ Brimson, 2 enormous outs. But with injury becomes opportunity. Jaden Campbell at fullback, Toby Sexton in the halves, both super talented footballers. Campbell in particular, I can't wait to see play this week given the crack at the number 1 spot. So I think they can overcome it. There's going to be plenty of points in this game again. We'll see if anyone can defend.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, who would have dared tip the Warriors to be in second place after 5 rounds? They have been fantastic. But the big question is if they can maintain the rage against a brave Newcastle side on Sunday. Josh, we saw what Newcastle were able to do against Manly, ended in 32-all. What do the Warriors have to do here to get on top of the Knights early?
I think they just need to keep doing what they have been doing. Shaun Johnson's been steering them around beautifully. What they do have this week, though, is they've got Tohu Harris coming back and Tamari Martin, which allows Jazz Tavaga to go back to the bench. He'll give them that X factor coming off the bench. And I'm just excited just to watch them go around again. I think they're gonna win this weekend. I'm quietly confident.
There you have it now. No Kalen Ponga for the Knights, Chris. What have you made of the Knights game without him being there?
I've actually been quite impressed, to be honest. Like, obviously, missing him early on in the season, having a lot of other injuries as well. A lot of people probably have written them off. Coming up, particularly last week against the Manly team, who are on fire, who have played some really high quality football and really take it to them with the players they have down. I'm tipping the Warriors, but I'm tipping it's going to be a close one because, the Knights are playing a style of football where they're just hanging in the game. They're giving themselves an opportunity in the back end of the game, and the Warriors are going to have to work for it. They're not going to beat themselves tonight, so the Warriors are going to have to do what they did against the Sharks, go all the way down the 80th minute, I think. Tim,
what did the stats say about the Knights and the Warriors game for this one?
Weak defensive edges around that. Both sides, I mentioned last game, there'll be plenty of points in it. The Warriors and the Knights. The Knights have got 2 of the probably highest upside attacking players on the wings in the competition, in Dom Young and Greg Marju. Both have some serious defensive deficiencies at times. The Warriors, as good as they were in the second half against the Sharks last weekend, the first half, very fragile on their edges. So again, we're going to need to see both sides stand up in defence, and neither team's going to have any trouble putting points on. So 2 exciting clashes, I think, to look at these ones, and we'll see who can stand up.
Well, a side that certainly does need to stand up is the Tigers. Can they pull off an Easter miracle against the Eels? Chris, you're certainly hoping so.
Yeah, I'm definitely tipping with my heart, not my head at this stage, obviously after the performance last week. I think if they are going to get off the board, this is the week to do it. Again, the corresponding game last year is when they did get their first win. If you look at a comparison, Eels were going better at that point in time, and arguably the Tigers have a better team. In saying that, they've just got to get the fundamentals right. Something they've been really struggling with over the first 5 rounds. If they can start well and execute well the first 20 or 30 minutes, it will give them confidence, and what it will do, it will really get into the confidence of Parramatta Eels. They'll be expected to win. They need to win, and if the Tigers can go with them deep in the game, they might start to get a bit shaky.
Josh, who do you like here?
I like Parra, but I like what Chris said there. They have to earn the right, and we spoke about this before with the Tigers. Last week they didn't do that. They had fundamental errors, and then they got their pants pulled down and a cricket score got put on them. They need to earn the right to play football, and we'll know in the first 20 minutes whether they've turned up or not. That's what you're going to get with the Tigers. You're going to know after 20 minutes if they're in this game or not. If they're not, it could be a big scoreline.
Yeah, well, that's our round 6 tips for your Easter weekend. Our experts are all united in every game, except for Josh Morris tipping a Dragons win and Chris Lawrence sticking with the Tigers. Thanks, Josh, Chris and Tim, as always. Don't forget to subscribe below and follow us on socials. We'll be back next week on Fox Sports Lab NRL.
G'day guys, the better SC Playbook multi of the week is Latrell Mitchell to score 50 plus official NRL fantasy points this weekend into Cody Walker anytime try scorer in the Easter Friday clash against the Bulldogs. I love what the Bulldogs last weekend in that really gritty golden point win over the Cowboys. They've lost a lot of troops, Franklin Pele, Raymond Faitala-Mariner, Viliame Kikau, all out, including a few other key middle forwards there. I think the Bunnies will have too much firepower. That is paying $3.20. Good luck.
League is life. It's exhilaration, anticipation, highs and highlights. League is everything. That's why we've made a betting brand for league fans. That's better. Chances are you're about to lose.